Hi guys, this is Lisha from Scarlet Moon Creations, and this is my April wrap up, uh, part 2, I guess. Really, it's my Owls Magical Readathon 2020 part 2 wrap up. Since all the books I read in the month of April slotted nicely into prompts for the Owls Magical Readathon, which is a readathon run by G at Book Rose, link down in the description. It's a readathon based on the Harry Potter Owls test, Ordinary Wizarding Levels. I talked about the first 4 books I read in April and the first 4 Owls that I accomplished in my last reading wrap up, and I will talk about the other 4 in this one. But before we get to that, we got to talk about my reading stats. This is the end of the month wrap up, so reading stats are what happens during these. So let's get right to it. So in the month of April, I've read 8 books, though technically some controversy here. One of the books I read, which I talked about in my last video, Fantastic Hope, I didn't read the entire book. That was an anthology. I read 2 of the stories in there, and that was what I had planned to read. So 7 books or 9 books since I read 2 stories? Who knows? Whatever. Pages read 2,914. Now this is a little short because going back to Fantastic Hope again, I did not think at the time to count how many pages those 2 stories amounted to, and I didn't put the full book page number in there, so this is short. It was an ebook I borrowed from the library, and by the time I thought about this, I have other books out, and the New York Public Library is restricting people to only 3 books at a time as far as lending out. So yeah, hopefully by the time I edit this video and it's up, you'll see the full number here, but if not, just know it is what it is. I'll update that at the end of the year, if nothing else. So anyway, hours listened 6. My average rating was a 3.69. No books acquired. I read 7 library books, and 3 of the books I read were own voices. Now, for the genres, I read 4 fantasy, 1 nonfiction, and 3 romance. It's been a while, but I was needing some romance. My format, 1 audiobook, 4 ebooks, and 3 physical books. My audience, I read 7 adult novels and 1 YA. Race-wise, I read 1 book with an African main character and 2 books with Black main characters. I read 4 new to me authors and 4 not new to me authors, so it was a nice balance. And the types of books I read, 1 standalone and 7 series. No rereads though. Last but not least, my ratings. I read 1 5-star book, 1 4.5-star book, 1 4-star book, 2 3.5-star books, and 3 3-star books. So not bad. So let's get into the 4 books. The last 4 books that I read in the month of April and for the Owls Magical Readathon. First book I read was The Queen's Bargain by Anne Bishop. I actually have a physical copy of this. I lent this to my grandmother and didn't really think about that as far as filming goes, so it is what it is. but this was a new release. This is one of my most anticipated releases of 2020, and I loved it. This was the 5-star read for me in this month. This is for me anyway, I had not been keeping my ear to the ground and following the author as closely in the past couple of years, but this was a surprise new addition to the Black Jewels universe of books by this author. The Black Jewels is one of my favorite series of all time, point blank, period. One of my favorite high fantasy. It's the core of it is the trilogy, and then there have been very many, not many, but several companion novels with a lot of the characters that were in the original trilogy. This particular installment, we got to see more of Damon and Lucifer and how they are doing, and what's going on there in Kalir and Eben Escavi, and things are not as great as they hoped, but that's life. Things are not always perfect. The good and the bad ebbs and flows, and these boys are learning that. And dealing with the various relationships, because they did not grow up. I say boys, these are men who are hundreds, if not thousands, hundreds of years old, but they didn't grow up for many hundreds of years with positive relationships and influences, so they're still kind of feeling their way, and seeing that is great. Seeing their relationship is awesome. See, with each other, I mean, and with others, and I don't mean like romantic relationships necessarily, though there are those. They're both married, but they also both have children and dealing with that, and they have other responsibilities and dealing with those types of relationships when they didn't have that positive experience is so fascinating to see, and they are two of my favorite characters. So do check this out. Like I said, I gave this 5 stars. This is adult dark fantasy. Trigger warnings for things like mentions of rape and abuse of males and females. And in this particular story, gossip, malicious gossip, and bullying to a ridiculous almost extent, and yeah, drug, what is it, non-consensual drug administering and drug use. So yeah, I read this for the Owl's prompt astronomy, and that was to read a book for the most part at night or at night, and I read this pretty much over 2 nights. So yay. Next up, I read Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert, and I gave this 3 stars. I didn't hate it, but I was struggling, and I'm still struggling to figure out why I was struggling, and I wasn't in a slump because once I told myself, you know what, there's other stuff you really wanted to read, and I picked up The Queen's Bargain. Like I just said, I flew through that in 2 days. But this is an adult contemporary romance featuring Chloe Brown and Red, her love interest. Chloe has fibromyalgia and deals with chronic pain. And it she is tired of kind of living her life in fear and dependent on her family, so she moves out of her parents' estate and moves into an apartment building where Red is the superintendent. And they don't get along at first because of mostly misunderstanding due to class issues, which I get. That is legit, and sometimes I've run into that myself. But yeah, but eventually they kind of like come together, and I like that these characters were not two-dimensional. I like both of them as people. I like their relationship. It was believable to me, but something had me struggling through this. And I think it's several things. So Chloe is from a wealthy family, like I said. She moved out of their estate. And it sounds like they lived in a mansion. Her parents are wealthy. Her grandmother is wealthy. They're well-to-do. They're not like, landed gentry or anything like that, but they're well-to-do and black, but also British, but also Jamaican, and add on to the fact that Chloe has fibromyalgia. So, like, all that in one person is not what I'm used to. I think I kept getting whiplash because I had some prejudices for what I expect a wealthy woman from Britain to be like, or a wealthy woman in general, and then what I expect a wealthy black woman to be like, and she wasn't quite like that, and both Red and I learned, obviously, and that's something I just gotta learn to deal with. So I didn't want to take more stars away from this because there was nothing wrong with it. Like, I liked their characters. I felt myself relating more to Red because, he's not from a wealthy family. He's not from super poor, but neither am I. And he's used to the struggle, but I am not a big redheaded white man from Britain either. So, I don't know. I want to try reading the next book because that follows the next Brown sister, and I didn't really, I was having a hard time picturing the other two sisters even. So let's just say I don't have a lot of experience with wealthy black women. I don't know how they act other than celebrities, and that's not what these girls are. So this was outside my comfort zone in a way that I was not expecting, and that shined a light on, some things. Chloe, there's also representation because Chloe is plus size. I don't know. So, yeah, they get on me in the comments if you want to. I'm very much aware this is absolutely ridiculous, but it was taking me out of the story and making me read it very slowly. So, anyway, I read this for the Owl's Prom Charmed, which was to read a book with white on the cover. I had been looking forward to this. There is nothing bad here. I just don't know. I just had my issues that I was climbing over and through while reading it, which made it more difficult. The next book that I read, it was actually one that I listened to. It was an audiobook. Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl by Issa Rae. Can I do this without? No, not much. Okay, I'll hold it like this. And yeah, so I listened to the audio book, and I've been wanting to for a while. I have not watched the awkward or read or whatever it is, awkward black girl stuff that she has online. And I haven't watched Insecure. I haven't seen anything with Issa Rae in it. But I've been interested since I started hearing about Insecure and Awkward Black Girl because I can identify with the label. So I checked this out. This is a celebrity memoir. This was read by Issa Rae, so literally hearing it in her voice was nice. This is obviously nonfiction. Um, this, I gave it 3 stars. This pretty much goes where most of these types of books do. You like some parts and agree with some parts, and you don't like or agree with or identify with others. I learned a lot about Issa Rae. I think the only part where I really truly disagreed was with regards to PDA. She had a whole section about public displays of affection, and that's just where we completely diverge. And that may seem strange, seeing as how I am not an immigrant, neither are my parents. My grandparents on one side are. So I don't have any of those immigrant experiences or stories, and they were definitely not African immigrants, so I don't have that either. So like I couldn't identify with those, but I can understand them, and there are similarities amongst many immigrant stories, but also I do have friends who are from Senegal and other African countries, so this is not brand new information for me. But it was just interesting comparing, contrasting our growing up. I think she's a couple of years older than me, Issa Rae, so with like the music and hair, and things like that. Schooling completely different, but yeah, all of these things happening at the same time, and yeah, I felt a little uncomfortable during the section she was talking about different types of black people and how to deal with them. Um, but I think that's just like whenever these kinds of label things come up, that happens. But overall, I this is my first toe dip into Issa Rae and her personality, her celebrity, and her humor, and I like it. So I am looking forward to hopefully reading Awkward or watching Awkward Black Girl. I forget what it is, if it's a web comic or a web series, and trying out Insecure if I find time to fit watching anything in my life. So, before I finish this, I read this for the Owl's Prompt Herbology, which was to read a title that started with an M, and as always, G says we can ignore like titles that start with the or a. So, the Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. I finally read that. That was on my 2019 TBR, and therefore my 2020 TBR. So that was good. The last book I read and will talk about during the month of April was The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory. I gave this 3.5 stars. This is I read the ebook from the library. This is an adult contemporary romance. Earlier this year during Blackathon, February Black History Month, I read The Wedding Party by accident, thinking that was the first book in the series. And no, it's not. It's The Wedding Date. So I didn't hate that, but I didn't love it. I was annoyed by the two characters' supposed hate um, to love. And what I found out was that the, they show up in the beginning of the series as because they're best friends with the two main characters in this one. So I was like, well, let's see, maybe it'll make more sense. So basically, here we have a black woman who is the chief of staff, I think, for the mayor of uh not San Francisco, but another Bay Area town, which is completely escaping me. I'll put it on screen if I remember. And she meets this guy, this white man in an elevator, and he has a wedding that he's supposed to be going to. And the issue, they get stuck in the elevator together. Like, this never happens. But they get stuck in the elevator together. They kind of hit it off, flirty, jokey, whatever, and they think they're never going to see each other again until he's like, hey, look, so this wedding I'm going to is actually between one of my friends and my ex-girlfriend. So, and I'm the best man. It would be great. Could you help me out if you were my date? Pretend to be my girlfriend. And it goes from there. I thought this relationship was more realistic than the wedding party's relationship, but it's still like, what? There are certain things that I found a little bit odd, but looking at other reviews, I was like, okay, so it's not just my inexperience with reading contemporary romances, particularly with black main characters, but also, so like, the love scenes are fade to black, which is annoying. But it's kind of abrupt. It's not like that's the end of a chapter or the end of a scene. Like, the author just like, yeah, they're getting to it, da 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 da, and then, alright, she wakes up and they have breakfast, and I'm just like, wait, what? That's the next sentence? Not in the same paragraph, but like, can we get like a space? Like, or a line or something? So it's awkward. And I just other little things here and there that kind of, I don't know. But yeah, I gave this 3.5 stars, better than the other book, and I do want to read The Proposal, which is book 2 of this series. So The Wedding Party is book 3. This is book 1, and book 2 is The Proposal, which has Carlos. I want to read because I loved Carlos in this, but I saw a couple of reviews and people are like, this is not the Carlos I read in The Wedding Date. So I'm just gonna wait for the disappointment and let it go. I read this book for the Owl's Prompt Ancient Runes, which was to read a book with a heart on the cover, and there were little hearts in there. Now that I've wrapped up all the books that I read this month, I just want to go over really quickly all the owls that I managed to read. I didn't read 12, which is mostly a disappointment because I have still like 2 library books that I have not gotten to since December that I really want to read and be able to give back when the library opens, which is hopefully in the next month or so, even if it's drop-off service, because this pile of books is, I need them to go. Anyway, so having completed 8 prompts, that other than 2, I have a lot of options. 2 careers, I have a lot of options. So I'm not going to be a spell maker, and I'm definitely not going to be alchemist, which would have been all 12 prompts. But I think I needed 2 other prompts to be a spell maker, if I'm remembering correctly, and that's just out. Other than those 2, I have lots of career options still open to me, so I'm not going to pigeonhole myself into anything just yet. I'll wait until August and the newts to pick out what books I want to read that will fit what prompts. that will go with whatever I did here. So I did Ancient Runes, Heart on the cover or in the title, wedding date. Astronomy, read a book. Read the majority of this book when it's dark outside. The Queen's Bargain. Care of magical creatures. A creature with with a beak on the cover. I read Assassin's Apprentice. Charms, a book with white cover. Get a Life, Chloe Brown. Herbology, title starting with an M. The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. History of Magic, a book featuring a witch or wizards. One of the short stories from Fantastic Hope fulfilled that prompt, and that was Asil's Not Date, I think it was called. Muggle Studies, read a contemporary book. I read Rookie Move. And Potions, read a book under 150 pages. I read the other short story from Fantastic Hope. I don't remember the title, but it was the Anita Blake short story. Lastly, Transfiguration, read a book or series that includes shapeshifters, and I read Kingdom of Ash. So, those are my newts, my owls, and actually that's 9, not 8. Yes, because I realized that each short story in Fantastic Hope can fulfill one prompt each. So, blat out. And that is all that I have to say. How did you guys do on your owls? Did you pass the ones that you wanted? Did you fulfill all of your prompts? Also, what did you think of the books that I read? Let me know what you read and what was your favorite. How well did you do reading wise in April? I'm going to wrap up this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, please hit that like button. It helps me so much. If you really like this and want to see more, I have my favorite series coming out slowly. And there will be more to come from that. Obviously, my reading wrap-ups, and I do plan with me videos and vlogs. So if all of that sounds interesting, do subscribe because I would like to chat some more. You can follow me on my Instagram, Twitter, and Goodreads down in the description below. And I will see you guys in the next video.